in Radhakund. Radhakund is, of course, Vrindavan. Radhakund being the place where the lake where Radharani would perform so many wonderful pastimes. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would go there and he would chant and deeply think of Lord Krishna. And Srila Bhakthisiddanta, his illustrious son, also would go there. So this is now a place of pilgrimage, this house. It actually belongs to the Gaudiya Math. And in that house is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's walking stick and a pair of wooden shoes that he has. A pair of wooden shoes. So we go there and offer our respects. So this is actually from those shoes. Somehow or other it came into my hands. So I'll pass this picture around and you can pray suitable prayers to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And then when the men have finished, you can pass to the ladies. So it's described that we are direct followers of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. In Vaishnavism, there's different sampradayas. We know the Sri Sampradaya, and the Kumara Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Brahma Sampradaya. So there are 4 bona fide sampradayas that are classified as Vaishnavas. And all of these sampradayas, no doubt, are very important. But the Yuga Avatar being Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he appeared within this material world, he appeared within the Brahma Sampradaya. He did not appear within the other sampradayas. So immediately this gives some very special significance to the Brahma Sampradaya over the other sampradayas, because Mahaprabhu chose to appear within the Brahma Sampradaya. And of course, when the Lord appears, when Lord Krishna appears, or when Mahaprabhu appears, many of his associates also appear with him. So along with Mahaprabhu came many of his intimate associates, and they also took their birth and were part of the Brahma Sampradaya. We have the 6 Goswamis: Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, all of them within the Brahma Sampradaya, and very confidential associates of Mahaprabhu and very confidential associates of Radha and Krishna. And coming all the way down, we have Krishnadas Kaviraj, Narottam Das Thakur, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Gokishore, and of course Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, all of these acharyas are of the highest degree, they're the highest caliber. There may be many types of acharyas, but these ones in our line are of the highest kind. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he followed in that exalted standard and was of the highest caliber of devotee. It's described by association with devotees, then one can get mercy. But then the question may be, there's different types of devotees. So we know there's a broad classification, there's one classification of Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. So this means according to the devotee you associate with, that will determine the type of mercy you get. You understand this? If you associate, Kanishta means a third-class devotee, Madhyam means second, middle, and Uttama means a top-class type of devotee. So if you associate with a Kanishta devotee, Prakrita Bhakta, Kanishta, then the type of mercy you will get will be of that quality. It will be mercy, but of a lower kind. And if you associate with a Madhyam, then the mercy will be of a higher quality. But if one is fortunate enough to be able to associate with the Uttama and develop some type of affection and attachment towards an Uttama Bhakta, then that type of mercy one can get is of the highest kind, is of the highest quality. And within the division of Uttama, also there's many different divisions. Srila Jiva Goswami describes in Sandarbhas there's 3 types of Mahabhagavats. 3 types of Mahabhagavats. And we know there are many different types of pure devotees. When I'm talking about Uttamas. Uttama means the top class type of devotee. We have information in the scriptures, such exalted devotees as the 5 Pandavas, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadev, Bhima, great devotees of the Lord. Arjuna was such a great devotee that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. Hanuman, great devotee of the Lord. Then we have in the Srimad Bhagavatam example of Dhruva Maharaj, great devotee. Prahlad Maharaj, Mahajan. So these are great devotees, and we aspire for their mercy and try to follow in their footsteps. But in our line, we have people like Rupa Goswami, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhakthisiddanta, and they're of even higher caliber. They're of the topmost caliber, because they're very confidential associates of Mahaprabhu and Radha and Krishna. So we're practically within living memory. Srila Bhakthisiddanta appeared in 1874. 1874. So that's just over 100 years ago. Srila Bhakthisiddanta appeared. I'll just go over his life a little bit. And right from the very beginning of his childhood, it was seen that he was a very special type of devotee. It is described that when he appeared, his umbilical cord, they say his umbilical cord is wrapped around him in the form of a Brahmin thread. And also an astrologer came, and on looking at this child, Lalit Prasad, on looking at this child, he noticed all the auspicious characteristics of a great devotee. Srila Rupa Goswami is described in Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Samhita Sindhu, that there are different characteristics of an auspicious personality, 32. The shape of the eyes, one's voice is very deep. These are different auspicious characteristics. There is fineness on 5 parts of the body, redness on 5 parts of the body, and so forth. So this astrologer noted in the physical appearance of Srila Bhakthisiddanta, Lalit Prasad, that he had these auspicious qualities. And then of course, his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is of the same caliber, a topmost Uttama Bhagavat. So to appear as the son of such an exalted devotee, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, also auspicious. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's mother, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's first wife died when he was very young, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was 20 years old. So he took a second wife because he had children, Bhagavati Devi Dasi. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Lalit Prasad, when he was young, his name was Lalit Prasad. So his mother was Lalit Bhagavati Devi Dasi, also a very wonderful devotee of the Lord. So when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, or rather Lalit Prasad, when he was young, his name was Lalit Prasad, as he was growing up, he had deep interest in Krishna consciousness. It's described at the age of 7, he was able to memorize the Bhagavad Gita off by heart. So how many verses in Bhagavad Gita? 700. And perhaps we know 10 or maybe 20, or after practicing Krishna consciousness for 10 or 15 years we may know 100. Of course, we just know them outwardly. We don't really, we can speak them, whether we really know the deep meaning, but we can say them. But Srila Bhakthisiddanta was able to know them all. So this is the difference between us and him. So he was able to know so many verses, and he also started worshipping a deity at a very young age. His father gave him deity. His father gave him Harinam initiation, and he gave him deity to worship, Lord Kurama. So he started worshipping a deity. And Lalit Prasad, Srila Bhakthisiddanta, was extremely intelligent. Materially, he was very intelligent, and of course, spiritually, he was of the highest intelligence. But even materially, his intelligence is very sharp, very, very intelligent indeed. At the age of 11 or 12, he devised a method of shorthand called Bhikanta. He devised a method of shorthand. And he excelled in his studies. He formed a group, just like young boys sometimes have like a group, like a gang. We would call it a gang. And they go around doing, especially at that teenage age, they may do things which are a little different. So Lalit Prasad, he formed a group, and the purpose of this group was not to go around and do mischief, but the purpose of his group was to actually become deeper in spiritual life. And in order to become a member of the group, what was the qualification? You had to be celibate. Sometimes, when boys have groups and things, in order to become a member of the group, you have to go and do something very daring, isn't it? Like, do something, let someone's tires down, or do something terrible. But Srila Bhakthisiddanta, Lalit Prasad, in order to become a member of his group and get his association, you had to become more detached from material life and take a vow of celibacy. So this was his mood. You can understand, his mood was so high. And he went to college in Calcutta, and he excelled in his study of material subjects. And they wanted to offer him a seat as a professor, senior lecturer, but a seat of teaching Sanskrit in Calcutta Sanskrit College. So Lalit Prasad was around about 20 or 21. So he thought, if I take this position, then the next stage will be Grihastha life. So he thought, this is not what I want. So he reclined. Rather, he thought, let me devote myself to a life of devotion. So he reclined from that offer of that post of teaching in one of the local universities. So at that time, Lalit Prasad was taking the association of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his father. He was taking the association of Srila Gokishore Das Babaji also. You can imagine what type of association that is. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a house near our Mayapur center. Those devotees who go there, we always go and visit it. It's on the other side of the Saraswati river. It's about half a kilometer or 1 kilometer perhaps from our Mayapur mandir. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, at a certain part of his life, he was living there, and Srila Bhaktivedanta also would be there, and Srila Gokishore Das Babaji would also be there. So this is the type of association they had, you can imagine. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, being very concerned about the spiritual evolution of Srila Bhaktivedanta, Lalit Prasad, he requested that his son Lalit Prasad take initiation. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was like Siksha. He was always giving advice to Lalit Prasad, Srila Bhaktivedanta, and he recommended or hoped that his son Lalit Prasad would take initiation from Gokishore Das Babaji. So, of course, Gokishore Das Babaji was a Mahabhagwat. He was Babaji, and extremely elevated. So, in the end, Srila Bhakthisiddanta did take initiation. Srila Bhakthisiddanta approached Gokishore Das Babaji and very humbly submitted himself. You please accept me as disciple. So Gokishore Das Babaji, his immediate response was, no, how can I do this? You're so elevated, you're so learned, you speak so many languages, you know scripture so well, you're like a walking encyclopedia. And I'm not so intelligent. Srila Gokishore Das Babaji, he was a grain merchant. He wasn't highly educated from the material point of view. So Gokishore Das Babaji, out of natural humility, refused. But Srila Bhakthisiddanta was insistent and continued asking. So in the end, Gokishore Das Babaji relented and agreed. But only after persistent Srila Bhakthisiddhanta's persistence did he actually agree. So when Srila Bhakthisiddhanta took initiation, then he very seriously immersed himself in thoughts of Radha and Krishna. And he took a vow. And this vow was to chant 10 billion names of Krishna. So in order to execute this vow, he would chant every day 3 lakhs, which is 192 rounds. This is round about the year 1905, 1906. So he was actually like Babaji, sitting, chanting, many, many rounds, all day long, and chanting deeply from the core of his heart, and thinking of Mahaprabhu and Radha and Krishna. He did this in different areas around Mayapur and Navadvip. So he did this for many years, 7, 8, 9 years, living very simply. And then, some or other, by the order of Mahaprabhu, he became inspired, he became instructed to start preaching. So, in the year 1918, he started preaching. And just prior to that, 1915, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur disappeared. In 1916, his spiritual master Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj also disappeared. Around those years, 15, 16, like that. Then, in 1918, he became inspired, he became instructed to start preaching. So in order to do this, in the year 1918, Srila Bhakthisiddanta, he took sannyas. In India, then the general public will give you much more respect and are more likely to listen to you if you are sannyas, outwardly have the appearance of sannyas. This was the case also with Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu took sannyas for this purpose. Otherwise, actually, there's no need. If one is not preaching, actually, there's no need. So Srila Bhakthisiddhanta, he took sannyas, and then he started his preaching movement, the Gaudiya Math. That was in 1918. So he was 44 years old. And he rented a house in Calcutta, Utkango Road, for something like 50 rupees a month. And that building is still there, you can see it, in Calcutta. And he started preaching. So Srila Bhakthisiddhanta was such a powerful preacher that in a very short time he was able to attract many people and created a very powerful preaching movement. And he was very revolutionary in his ideas of preaching. He introduced things which hadn't been practiced before. Srila Bhakthisiddanta, he was so powerful. One thing he introduced was this yukta vairagya. What does yukta vairagya mean? Real renunciation. It means using whatever you have, whatever facility you have in the service of the Lord. Prior to the preaching of Srila Bhakthisiddanta, Vaishnavas, sadhus, they would not ride in cars. They would not. They'd be reluctant to wear sewn cloth. They wouldn't wear a watch. Even now, you see this in India. Sadhus, don't really wear watches. But we see on the altar picture of Srila Bhakthisiddanta, he has a watch. And there's a famous picture of Srila Bhakthisiddanta, and he's sitting in the back of a Rolls Royce. A Rolls Royce. You can imagine if we drove around, if when Krishnadas Maharaj and Giriraj Maharaj come to the airport, we send Rolls Royce, top of the line, silver cloud, Rolls Royce, and we bring them here, then it may raise a few materialists or karmis may think, what is this? It's bad enough driving in Mercedes. But there's Srila Bhakthisiddanta sitting in the back of a Rolls Royce. Of course, it's a veteran Rolls Royce. It's a 1930. But at that time, it was the best car, Rolls Royce. And he's sitting in the back like that. So he's using that to preach. So this is perfect renunciation. So this was unheard of. But Srila Bhakthisiddanta was introducing this. What he was doing was so amazing. And in order to expand the preaching, he accepted many disciples. It is said in his biography that he accepted 50,000 disciples in order to expand the preaching, and created so many printing presses because he believed that Brihat Mridanga, that the printing press was the real way to propagate and spread. This was the loud mridanga. He said that the small mridanga, the clay mridanga, you can hear for a few houses away, but the big mridanga is the printing press. So he introduced this. He established 4 printing presses. 4 printing presses he established. And at one time he was printing, every day he was printing a newspaper about Krishna consciousness. We, in this temple, we print maybe, I think, every 2 months or 3 months, Hare Krishna Times or whatever, Hare Krishna News. But at one point during the life of Srila Bhakthisiddanta, they were printing every day. And it was being distributed also. And then, and to organize his preaching movement, he gave sannyas to so many disciples. He had a body of senior devotees, 18 or 20 devotees, sannyasis, who helped organize his preaching movement. Because he gave direction and they put it into effect. And he also had traveling diorama displays. In India, there are many expert artisans, craftsmen, and they make dioramas out of straw and then cover with clay, and they paint very nicely. So he had a traveling diorama exhibition depicting the pastimes of Ram Leela, Mahabharata, and so forth. And this used to travel around, and people would come and they would become attracted by it. So this also is revolutionary, something different. And he would also charge money for people to enter this, to see. And the money he was able to get from that and other type of collections, he bought 2 steamboats, something else different, 2 steamboats. And his followers and disciples would travel Ganges and so forth, and they would preach, traveling on the steamboats. Again, this is something is different. So Srila Bhakthisiddanta introduced these types of revolutionary ideas and concepts in order to preach the message of Mahaprabhu. So only someone of his category can do this. Because he's of such a high category, he is able to do this, introduce these types of things. And his preaching was so powerful that when he would visit different towns, and there were Mayavadis there, or members of other pseudo-religious groups. At that time, the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and after, there were many sahajas, and especially within the Vaishnavism, there were many aprasampradayas or pseudo-Vaishnavas, Kali Chelas, persons pretending to be Vaishnavas, but also introducing bogus things. I'll give you one example. Like the rhyming mantra. The rhyming mantra. This was introduced by different so-called Vaishnavas. And they changed the Maha mantra. And they made it into like a rhyming mantra. What is it they say? Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. And behind our temple in Vrindavan, there's a Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Mandir. And they chant it all the time. Right outside my room where I was staying for 4 months. Every year I stay in the same room. And right down the bottom I can see right into the temple. They do 24-hour kirtan, Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 24 hours a day. So this is rhyming mantra. So this is not actually correct. It's not according to scripture. It's not according to the teachings of Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhakthisiddanta preached against this. When Srila Bhakthisiddanta was young, he was 26 years old, he traveled with his father Bhaktivinoda Thakur to Jagannath Puri. And at that time there was one very popular Babaji, Radharaman Das Babaji. Something like that his name was. And he was introducing this rhyming mantra in Jagannath Puri. So Srila Bhakthisiddanta, because he was younger at that time, he preached very strongly against this person. And he preached, it's described in his biography, he preached so strongly against this that he caused a lot of people became disturbed. So at that time, his father thought the best thing was that they just leave, because he was so strong. That was one of his techniques, chopping technique. Srila Bhakthisiddanta would preach so strongly that one of his techniques of preaching was called the chopping technique. So Srila Bhakthisiddanta preached against these Mayavadis, but especially these pseudo-Vaishnavas. And when he would visit certain towns, and there were pseudo-Vaishnavas, Prakrita Sahajas, especially Mayavadis, when they were there, if they knew he was coming, then they would avoid him. They would leave and they would avoid him. Because if he confronted them, then he would defeat them. Because of his knowledge and his fearlessness in preaching, then they would be defeated and embarrassed. So they would make excuses and they would leave. This is also described in one pastime. In the year 1911, there was a controversy in the Vaishnava community, and the Smarta Brahmins, they introduced some different points. The Smarta Brahmins are the puffed up Brahmins. Smarta Brahmins, they introduced different points. One point they said was that unless you are born in a Brahmin family and duly initiated, you cannot worship Shalagram. You understand? You have to be born in Brahmin family to worship Shalagram. And the second point they said was that you cannot become an acharya unless you're born in a Brahmin family. In order to be an acharya, you have to be born in a Brahmin family. To be born in a lower family and to be a Vaishnava and to be initiated, that's not good enough. You have to be born in a Brahmin family to be an acharya of an organization or a mat, like that. So at that time, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur he was very old. He passed away in 1916, so this is 1911, 1912. The last 4 years of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, he became deeply engrossed in thoughts of meeting. They were going to argue the point. The Brahmins, Smarta Brahmins, caste Brahmins, and so forth, and then the Vaishnavas. And then amongst the Vaishnavas, different sampradayas, and they were going to argue the point. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent his son, Srila Bhakthisiddanta, to try to represent Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So Srila Bhakthisiddanta went, and according to the biography of Srila Bhakthisiddanta, this meeting was over 3 days. And people were talking back and forth like this. And on the last day, Srila Bhakthisiddanta was requested to talk. So Srila Bhakthisiddanta, he spoke first, glorifying the Brahminical culture very nicely. He was very expert at speaking and giving reference also. So he established the unique position of how the exalted position of being Brahmin. And of course the Brahmins sitting there were very pleased to hear this glorification of themselves. And then Srila Bhaktivedanta explained, but to be a bona fide Vaishnava is superior. And he gave so many quotes from authorized scripture, Puranas, Srimad Bhagavatam, describing that the position of a Vaishnava is superior to that of a Brahmin. And then the Brahmins, their mouths dropped. And they also had to admit defeat. And as described in the biography, that the crowd was going wild. And it was a victory for Srila Bhaktivedanta and the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So the crowd was so impressed by Srila, they wanted his mercy. So they wanted, and the attendance of the festival, the attendance of this particular conference, they requested that Srila Bhaktivedanta would wash his feet, and they could take that water and they could give it to the crowds, because the crowds were going wild. So Srila Bhaktivedanta refused. So they washed his feet anyhow, described, and they gave the water. And in this way, the devotees were pleased. So we can understand from this that Srila Bhaktivedanta was a very unique person and introduced so many wonderful revolutionary ideas in preaching. And we are in his line. We are fortunate enough to be in his line. We are connected to him. So if we can develop our attachment and affection towards persons like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada, then this is the best type of attachment we can have. Because from that type of attachment we can get the best mercy. And we want the best mercy. We want the highest quality of mercy. So these persons are our well-wishers. Although they may not be manifest to our mundane vision, they are conscious of what we're doing. And if we undertake some risk in the preaching movement, then they will be so much pleased on us. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was pleased when a few of his disciples would sell a few magazines, a few newspapers. He would be very pleased. So you can imagine how pleased Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would be with our preaching efforts here in South Africa, establishing and maintaining this temple, with the Bhaktivedanta College, with our Food for Life programs, and all that, so forth. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would actually be very, very pleased. And by his pleasure, then he will give mercy. And it's by this mercy that we can elevate ourselves to higher stages of bhakti. See? It's described by Kapila Muni in third canto, that every sane man knows that attachment to material things is the greatest entanglement for the spirit soul. Every sane man knows that attachment to material things is the greatest entanglement for the spirit soul. But when that same attachment is transferred to devotees of the Lord, it opens the doors of liberation. Mumoksha dwaram aparvatam. It opens the doors of liberation. So we want to develop our attachment for these types of devotees. Vishvambar Guru Seva. And this attachment, this should be with great affection. We should try to have some affection, some real affection for these types of devotees on this level. Mahabhagavats of this level. The Goswamis, Srila Bhakthisiddanta, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and our own Srila Prabhupada. And then this affection and this attachment can take us back to the spiritual world. We become in line for so much svabhagya, so much good fortune by developing our feeling and attachment. So by taking on some responsibility in this preaching movement, in the preaching movement of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktivedanta, then we can please such persons and we can become eligible for their mercy. And by their mercy, we can come to the higher stages of bhav and prema and so forth. So this is our prayer, that we can become attached and please such persons, and by taking on responsibility in the preaching movement, managing, preaching, and by balancing this with our sadhana, by becoming deeply, seriously practicing our sadhana, then we can please these personalities and we can become eligible for the highest type of mercy, which is actually what we're all hankering for. So, thank you very much. Srila Bhakthisiddanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.